Some breaking news about Trump's cabinet has come out last night as Ambassador to the UN from the US, Nikki Haley, is announcing that she will resign at the end of the year 2018. Now, Nikki Haley has been appointed by President Trump to serve as the United States ambassador, and she's officially stated that she is done with the position at the end of the year and that she is committed to staying for 2 years under Trump's administration. So there's been speculation as to why she's resigning, and there are two main reasons. I'm going to start with the less likely one and then get to the more likely one. Personally, I think either is going to be possible and possibly mixed, but cease here with the first reason that people are spouting that's the more popular but less likely in my opinion, is that she could be seeking a higher place in politics and could be wanting to advance to a different position instead of the United States ambassador to the UN. So she could be wanting to go to the Trump administration, but I'll get to why that's unlikely in a couple minutes, because mainly she is being seen as some light resistance in the Republican Party to the Trump administration. Or she could be seeing a 2020 Senate seat, which is the most likely case that people have been spouting when it comes to her wanting to seek another political move, because she is from the state of South Carolina, and as many people during the Kavanaugh hearings have seen, there's a senator from the state of South Carolina known as Lindsey Graham. He did try to run for president in 2016. Most people who don't follow politics, or maybe even you guys, don't know that he did, and the reason why you guys wouldn't be like ashamed of knowing this is because he just flat out sucked and no one liked him, because he politically is essentially just Mike Huckabee and all the other right-wing, like, theocratic extremists, not even like Trump extremist. He's just like a right-wing theocratic hyper-Christian, and there are many of those already. So, on a tangent about Lindsey Graham, pretty sure he's been trying to get more attention in the news, and as you've seen during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, he was super furious, probably faking it. In fact, he looked a bit more like going for the politically incorrect side, as he even said during the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, and he gave a solid 4-minute speech to Brett Kavanaugh trying to praise him for all the quote-unquote trouble he had during his nomination, and it's probably because he's trying to get in cahoots with Trump. He's been praising him more and more, probably trying to get into the Trump administration, which could actually make sense for the whole Nikki Haley side, as he's up for re-election in 2020, the next election for senators after the midterms of this year. So what could happen is Lindsey Graham either goes into the Trump administration for who knows what department. There's been some floats that Jeff Sessions, since he's probably the least Trump supportive person in Trump's cabinet now that Rex Tillerson is now out and been replaced by former CIA head Mike Pompeo. Attorney General Jeff Sessions could be possibly kicked out in replace of someone like Lindsey Graham, since he's been sucking up to Trump. And then during 2020, since Lindsey Graham wouldn't seek a re-election bid, Nikki Haley could take over. Now, the second reason why Nikki Haley might be resigning, and probably the more likely, is that there's been some allegations to Nikki Haley about her possibly being corrupt. So there was an investigation the day of that she resigned. So the morning of, it was announced that they were going to investigate her possibly accepting flights from GOP donors and how that might break certain ethics or corruption laws in the US, which is quite shocking to see how politicians, they usually, if you're a politician, you usually don't break corruption laws. That's pretty uncommon for politicians to break corruption laws. Sarcasm. So now that was announced the morning of, and as you can see, this was roughly at 6 of yesterday, October 9th, and today is October 10th. I'm reporting this, so it was that night that she officially announced that she would resign at the end of the year, which still gives some time for the investigation to go, and if it's found out she did break these codes and laws, that could damage the reason one of her seeking a political move. But it honestly couldn't as well, because either A, it could find nothing, B, it could be some minor things that many Republicans wouldn't care about. However, the Democrats have been trying to do the solid fight against the Republicans as a resistance towards Trump, somewhat effectively, somewhat not. And now that since they're picking off minor things from Republicans, this could be used as a strat if she's trying to run in South Carolina. But honestly, even if it is something big, since it is South Carolina, this is the heart of the Bible Belt, the deep red states such as South Carolina. I personally have family from South Carolina, my mother being born and raised in Charleston after moving up to New England from the beautiful state of Maine, by the way. Nice plug if you've never been to Maine, vacation land. It's a perfect place to go. But besides the point, South Carolina, I've visited many times. Beautiful, however, politically it is not beautiful as it's hyper red conservative state, except for city of Charleston. Even that's a bit sketchy. So if she were to run in such a state, South Carolina, it probably would not affect her at all, since they have politicians like Lindsey Graham being there and running. So there is a third reason that people have been spouting. Mainly, I saw this first on MSNBC, so I'll use them as an example and why it's a flat out joke. They've been saying, and I'll read you the headline right now on their YouTube video: Nikki Haley should be ready to primary President Donald Trump, according to a GOP strategist. So, if you are like me, and you are a sane person who isn't a neocon and is part of the GOP's dwindling Trump resistance, you'll see that that is just a flat out joke, and MSNBC should probably be ashamed for even using that as a headline. There's been some talks for doing 2024, and even that might be slim. So, just the 2020 run against Trump, they've been saying that she should primary Trump. That's probably a joke. I don't think it would be, since there is still a Trump resistance from the right, but it's very dwindling. There was originally some, especially during the primaries and even in the first months after his presidency, you saw people like Jeff Flake, Joe Biden famously taking out against Trump, since Trump was attacking Joe Biden. He made fun of him for being captured in Vietnam, famously saying, "Oh, I only like veterans who aren't captured," which is quite disgusting. Interesting how Trump's elected after saying that and being anti-veteran. But there was a large part of the Republican base that didn't like Trump, who were like core neocons, especially within the political sphere. Excuse me. But that's mainly dwindled, and especially among voters, which is where it really matters. Anyone who tries to primary Trump is definitely going to lose in 2020, unless something insane happens that even Republican voters would care about, such as a Nixon type impeachment style, where Watergate, but like 1,000 times happens. But even that may not work, since Trump does have this deep cult personality where he pulls in weird coalitions of hyper-nationalist right-wingers, evangelical Southern Christians, and even some moderates who just like the fact that he's anti-establishment and believe that any attempts to undermine him is just part of the deep state media and corrupt media. So, anyone who tries to primary him, someone might. I honestly think someone might primary him. Maybe not Nikki Haley. My personal guess is that Jeff Flake is ready to retire after he's been in Senate forever. But he would probably just get crushed, especially since no one likes Jeff Flake. He's touted himself as being one of the more moderate Republicans, but his voting record shows that he's at like 85% voting with Trump in the Senate. So not quite moderate. So reasons that I've seen to believe Nikki Haley might try to run against Trump and why people have been touting her as this a stab anti-Trump sort of representative is really small reasons. The biggest thing that I could see is that she came out heavily against the anti-Muslim ban. That was the famous Trump travel ban that was essentially a ban. It was a ban towards 8 or 9 countries that were all predominantly Muslim, and that was Trump's way of trying to ban Muslims from entering the country temporarily, and it got pushed back originally to the point where it would have been in effect a lot shorter than it was being repealed. So we already have seen what its effects wouldn't have been, and that during the time where it was supposed to be in place and was being repealed, no terrorist attacks really happened from Muslims. So on that note, his travel ban has been a complete waste of time, and Nikki Haley's in the right on this one. But you'll see she's in the right wing of the political sphere and wrong on many other things where she backs Trump, which is on the issue of Israel. She's heavily in support of Israel, even though they commit war crimes and many atrocities to Palestine, who themselves are in the wrong, but Israel, they only seem to care about Israel and not how Palestine is being abused. So she came out in support of the move to Jerusalem, which was when Trump tried to, and successfully actually, sadly, sorry, Nikki Haley supported when Trump came out and moved the base, the U, the, sorry, Trump moved the embassy, there we go, the embassy of the U.S. to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which essentially ended any type of negotiation between Israel and Palestine because they both claimed it as theirs, and essentially gave all rights away for Israel to take over Jerusalem. And she also is super anti-Iran. She doesn't support anything that is pro-Iran, and even came out hating the rebels in Yemen that were fighting a Saudi-backed government. And as we saw famously on CNN, actually, they did something good once in their life. They did a report about the bus where 40 kids in Yemen were killed by Saudis who had U.S. weapons. So that's a way to tarnish the U.S.'s reputation, even though it's already been tarnished. Now, cutting to if she were to run, two of her main positions, she's pro-life back when she was the governor of her state, South Carolina, because she has had political experience besides the UN position, and she was famously pro-Confederate flag for a long time until her, in 2015, I believe, was when all the craze about the Confederate flag came around, and then she waffled on it a bit and pansied out by not taking either side. So one final thing as we wrap this up is there's been questions on who is going to be replacing Nikki Haley. Now, there hasn't been any official announcements, but one thing Trump has said is that he would like Nikki Haley to be replaced by Ivanka if he could, because legally, under laws, you can't really have people in your family take official positions. Trump's been avoiding these currently by not appointing them, but having, Donald Trump Jr. meet with the likes of Kim Jong-un on diplomatic missions, which isn't bad for that case, but nepotism in general is a horrible thing. and Donald Trump is currently going to show you why promoting it, it's not the best move.
I've heard a lot of names. I've heard Ivanka. I've heard how good would Ivanka be. The people that know, there's nothing to do with nepotism, but I want to tell you, the people that know that Ivanka would be dynamite. But, I'd then be accused of nepotism, if you can believe it, right? Yes. I think Ivanka would be incredible. That doesn't mean I'd pick her because you'd be accused of nepotism. Even though I'm not sure there's anybody more competent in the world, but that's okay. But we are looking at numerous people.
So that was quite a joke. First off, Trump, you know how he really does want it in his heart that Ivanka should be appointed to the UN, is that he keeps going on about it. He keeps restating that, oh, the reason why I can't is because of this stupid thing called nepotism. Why is that such a thing? He probably wonders that. But anyways, this is just a sign of how corrupt the Trump administration is, that he would even think or entertain the idea that his daughter should be put in a position to meet with the world. Because Ivanka Trump, well, she's probably the most sane out of the Trump family, especially not like when you look at Donald Trump Jr. He's definitely way more competent and sane than that. She should not be in a position where she has had no experience diplomatically meeting with the world, and especially all of the world at once on the stage of the UN. But this may be actually more of an insight to how Trump views the UN and how Nikki Haley kind of took it seriously. Trump is really not a fan of the UN, and especially world politics as a whole. He's been more focused on America first, which is fine and all, except for the fact that it's starting to breed certain nationalist sentiment behind it, which is never good. Nationalism would not recommend. Patriotism would recommend, but not nationalism. Two different terms. And Trump did come out saying that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, another example of world unity and law under the world, is a joke and does not pertain to the United States, and he's threatened to sanction the courts. John Bolton has as well, who is one of his national security advisors. And this is because, obviously, they were going to investigate George Bush for possible war crimes, aka the war crimes he did commit in Iraq. And Trump doesn't want this, obviously, because then he could be investigated for any crimes he committed in the world stage and in wars he would commit. Like he would probably want to under Iran, because he's been so hostile towards that nation, just like Nikki Haley has.